You found us for Season 3, Episode 1. Jacob, what are we going to be talking about today?
The best things that happened in space in 2025.
Also, some of the worst events that happened in space in 2025.
But that's not it. We're also going to be talking about what we expect for space in 2026. All coming up on the next Orbital Edge.
Hi, welcome back to Orbital Edge News. I am your co-host Jacob, and seated next to me is...
Hi, I'm Liza. I'm the newest astronomy correspondent. Here we have...
Hi, my name is Ava. I'm also one of the newest astronomy correspondents, and next to me is Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin. I'm a spaceflight correspondent, and also joining us in orbit we have...
Hi, I'm Alexis, and I'm space telehost and new spaceflight correspondent.
And I'm Chad. All right, let's get this going. The best thing you thought was in space in 2025, Ava?
So personally for me, I think the best thing that happened in space in 2025 was the images from the James Webb Space Telescope showing us images of galaxies from the early cosmic dawn. We're talking 500 to 700 million years after the Big Bang. While that does seem like a very long time in a cosmic scale, it's very, very short. And for us, seeing very massive and very mature galaxies that early on completely redefines how we think of our cosmological principles and how we think about the cosmic model of our universe.
It's a lot of big words. Could you simplify it down for someone who's new to space?
So a good way to really break this down is I'm going to use the analogy of a kindergarten class. And I know that's going to sound weird to start off with, but just follow me with this. So if you walk into a kindergarten class, you're expecting to see maybe a small kid, 3 foot tall, your average kindergartner. But what we are seeing with the telescope is more equivalent of walking into a kindergarten class and seeing a NFL D1 linebacker, fully mature in a kindergarten class. Completely unexpected. And that's exactly the reaction. Your reaction right now is the reaction that we had when we saw this data coming in. And so seeing these galaxies that are as big as the Milky Way, if not bigger and more mature, in the very, very early universe implies that galaxies were forming way earlier than we thought they could. And so that really gives us an opportunity to redefine how we understand the model of our universe.
It's fascinating.
Really cool.
It is, yeah. The James Webb is absolutely a fascinating telescope. The more we use them, the more time we have on it as we're going further, seeing that we can find, more of these galaxies in the early cosmic dawn, seeing if we can actually make it fit to how we understand our cosmic model right now, or if new theories are going to come on in and change how we understand things.
Fascinating. Alexis, it's your turn.
Yeah. So whenever I was looked over more of the biological aspect of space discoveries throughout 2025, and one of the big discoveries is that Mossworth are actually able to survive 9 months outside of the ISS station, which the study was led by Dr. Fujita, and he kind of was able to analyze after the fact that some of the moss did degenerate, but that's kind of going to be expected, especially with the UV radiation. And the big thing to take away from this study is that moss can aid oxygen generation, and this is a big advancement for future space exploration, and especially when we talk about the aspect of wanting to go to Mars and how are we going to build the oxygen on a new planet. And I thought it was really cool because they were even still able to reproduce after returning from being outside of the ISS for 9 months. When they returned to Earth, they were still able to reproduce normally.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. To be able to survive, outside of the ISS like that for more than, they've done studies that have ranged from a week, couple of days, but seeing something that ranged on the scale of months is really, really impressive.
Yeah, I remember I don't remember exact wording. I remember hearing when I was a kid that like some of the most oxygen produced on the planet comes from like moss, algae, those smaller things. So I'm wondering how that's going to like, of course it's like centuries down the line, but I wonder like how that could be used in like terraforming or something.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like just entire Mars covered in moss.
It's a big moss mass. Just
But, it's thinking about like what we have here on Earth and being able to apply it to as we go further out into the solar system.
Yeah. All right, very cool. It's now my turn. My big winner of 2025 for space is the moon. When I was a kid, I went to the Museum of Science and Technology in Tampa, Florida, and they had an exhibit for the moon base that would one day come. And they said it was going to be 2070 when we would finally have astronauts living on the moon. I'm very happy to report that that is seemingly unlikely at this point. As time progresses, it's becoming more and more likely that we'll have a colony on the moon within the next 10 years. Both NASA and China have been making some major progress in returning to the moon, and they're both really eyeing putting man there permanently. So I'm really happy to see that Artemis is finally making some progress. The Chinese taikonauts have really been stepping up their game. This year, they started testing a lunar lander that looks promising. They also have a rocket that does seem to be capable of getting to the moon and back. So I'm definitely looking forward to 2026. Hopefully the Artemis program gets off the ground and we start seeing some progress toward the moon.
That would be very, very interesting to see. I mean, to think about 10 years from now, where we'll be saying, remember when we said 10 years ago that they were going to have this, and think about how soon that actually is for us. I mean, it's really shocking to see the level of advancement that's come within the last 5-10 years.
Yeah.
the level of technology that can be built from it too. Just
Yeah.
having like an observatory, so we don't have to deal with Earth's atmosphere, would be huge.
Yeah. Just anything involving the moon is just so cool to me, because this is probably going to be like a catchphrase for me on this channel. My grandfather worked for the Apollo program. He helped build and like do everything with lunar landers. So it's just really cool to finally go back to the moon and know like, oh, my family has a huge piece of history involving that.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's a wonderful legacy. And to think too, when teaching others about why it is important to have a base on the moon. I mean, even for the future possibilities of trying to get to Mars, the amount of fuel that it takes to get from the Earth to the moon is a lot more than I think people normally realize compared to that, especially of the moon to Mars. Earth's gravity well is just so immense that the amount of fuel it takes to get out of that, having a station on the moon where you can actually refuel before going to Mars, it's way more efficient.
Yeah, just like the lunar gateway that they're building right now to help actually support Artemis. So that's really, really cool, and that's what we're excited about. We hope to see some more hardware updates here in 2026 on that. I do wanted to kind of add on, this future exploration that we're doing on the moon. There's a Goldilocks zone on how many years out people care about it. So you don't want to go over about 10 years into the future. So if you start saying, like 2070 is ridiculous. That's not going to get really people excited about going back to the moon if you tell people, oh, this is going to just be in 40 years. Well, people are going to, that's just too far out. But people are saying 10 years is that sweet spot where, it is a distant goal, but it's within someone's lifetime. So I just kind of wanted to throw in about the whole outlook into the future, and you don't want to stretch that too far.
Absolutely, Chad. Liza, what do you got?
So MIT has actually released a study in 2025 that the ozone layer is healing, which is really big news because we didn't expect it to heal this quickly. I think a lot of people get confused with like how the ozone layer works and like why it was getting depleted to begin with. We had these things called chlorofluorocarbons, which is too much of a mouthful, so we just call them CFCs. So basically, CFCs came from air conditioning, arsenal like propellants, and then just other various things that you use in your day-to-day life. And the ozone layer is actually made of O3, which is just 3 oxygen combined, which is not very stable in any capacity. So when something is unstable, it likes to bond with anything it can. So with the CFCs floating into the atmosphere, it was instantly bonding. And because of this, there was a hole just being depleted into the atmosphere, which is causing UV rays to just absolutely pulverize us and like causing skin cancer and just global warming and nothing good. So there's laws instated called it's on the tip of my tongue, sorry, I forgot what it's called. Sorry. Sorry, I should probably put it on my notes.
I want to, that study, how many years did that take?
The study itself?
Yeah.
It's not the study started in 1985. But just
So it's an ongoing.
well, the MIT one specifically got released in 2025.
Okay. All right.
So it was published officially, their research results were published.
Yes, it's a published study, and basically what happens that creates O3 is there's 2 ways that chemical bonds can happen, and that's through either just the bonding between the electrons in the valence field, and then through the just physical collision, just being physically close, and then oxygen is just getting shot at each other in the ozone layer, which is causing these bonds. So just through time and then not producing CFCs, the ozone layer will naturally heal itself, and we should be on target for it to be fully healed by like 2035, which is not far away.
Yeah, that's very impressive, especially I remember learning as a kid, hearing all about the ozone layer and the hole in the ozone layer. And that seemed like a very pressing issue to me as a kid, hearing about it all the time. And so now to see that, actually having like a universal law where you're limiting the use of those CFCs and actually seeing that, hey, internationally we organized and got together to establish this law, and it actually helped the environment. It also gives us a lot of potential going forward in the future, the other things that we can help do for the environment.
No, definitely. I feel like there's always just bad news of like the environment's dying, we need to stop. But it shows that our effort does lead to actually helping and healing the environment. Like we do make a difference when we install these laws.
Oh yeah.
And I hopefully that can then lead to us like maybe seeing this and making more changes.
Yeah. I agree.
Like it's basically about hearing like the Great Barrier Reef near like Australia is like almost completely bleached, and that's horrible. But if we can actually work together and maybe do something like that, then seeing this news of the ozone layer getting fixed slowly, we can maybe fix the rest of it.
I'm pretty sure the Great Barrier Reef is like almost like
Parts of
it's getting a lot better.
It is?
So,
Okay.
yes.
Some endeavors going into reestablishing the Great Barrier Reef, which is really exciting, but we're definitely ways away from where it used to be.
Yes.
To get us back to space, my best news of 2025 actually happened in November. It was I guess talking about it from advancement in the relationship between NASA and China's space program when it comes to stopping satellite collisions. For the longest time, we've like been reaching out to them saying like, oh hey, we noticed like we have satellites that are on the same trajectory, and we're gonna adjust ours slightly so that we don't crash, just don't do anything. In like the last year in November, for the first time, China reached out to us and was like, hey, we noticed this, we're going to move so that we don't crash, you guys don't do anything this time. And according to that same article that I read, this is like a massive advancement because one of China's goals in the 2020s was to reach out to other space programs to try and foster a larger connection, to maybe get advancement to start going and going and going so that we can maybe even get to the moon earlier. I think this is really cool because one of the things that this can help prevent is the Kessler effect, which is the worst case scenario where satellites start crashing into each other, making a bunch more space junk, making a bunch more satellites start crashing into each other, which would make stuff like astronomy and any kind of space research basically completely impossible because there would be no way to get anything up there. But then that also leads into China's also said they want to start trying to research how to get space trash out of the atmosphere, like safely. And so if we can have a lot more cooperation between every country's space programs, that would be very, very good, I think.
Oh yeah, international collaboration is always where, we see the biggest advancements, especially in something like the space industry. Having China, the United States, the European Space Agency, all of us like really coming together for one common goal. That's something that I loved to see during 2025.
Speaking of collaboration, it is time to hear from our host, Chad. What do you believe is the best news for space in the year of our Lord, 2025?
Well, as you may or may not know, you probably guessed, the Blue Origin New Glenn launch. The reason why I chose that is because it was our only exploration mission to Mars that we've actually have done the whole year. Yeah, we had those moon landers in January. We'll get to those later. I want to talk about that in the next segment. But that was a really impressive launch. Also, there's an honorable mention. I'm going to have to give credit to SpaceX's back-to-back Starship. They barely got into orbit, but they did it. So that was really cool that they were able to push forward with that. So that's pretty much all I have to say, which I really loved about 2025. And with that said, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, the worst things in space last year. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Orbital Edge News. We have just conducted our survey of the best things that happened in space in 2025. Now, it's time to look at the worst. Ava, what do you got?
So, as you guys are all probably familiar with, last year there was major proposed budget cuts to NASA. This definitely shook the scientific community, especially the planetary science community. The budget cuts were upwards of 40%, especially to major science directives. I personally know many colleagues that have had research impacted from these budget cuts. And so fortunately, coming into this year, Congress did approve a much higher budget. It's still a decrease from what was in the year prior, roughly 2%. But it is significantly higher than what the original budget cuts were proposed for, and I think that myself and everyone included in the space community was really afraid when we saw those numbers come out of these are the new budget for NASA, and it makes you think what's going to happen to all these ongoing projects, these projects that NASA has been talking about for years. And so I'm happy to say that that's not the case, at least for this coming year for 2026, but it definitely was some of the worst space news to come out in 2025.
That's very rattling.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, they were looking at cutting NASA's budget by 25%. So the 2% is it's really good news, actually, that we're just cutting 2%.
In
Still.
some cases, there's upwards of 40%, going upwards of 50%. I mean, it would have completely taken major projects just right off of the board.
Yeah.
And there's so many people who are already invested in those projects, and these are their jobs too. And so the number of jobs that would have affected, I can't even imagine what that would have been like.
All right, Alexis, what do you got?
For my worst of 2025, I have an astronaut who actually fell ill on the ISS. This resulted in 4 astronauts being evacuated from the ISS very abruptly, and as of right now, they haven't come out with who actually was sick because they're trying to respect the privacy of the astronaut. But when this happened, astronaut Mike Finch had to hand over command to a Russian cosmonaut, because he had to evacuate pretty quickly. It has come out from some sources that JAXA has stated that Yui, which was one of the astronauts that was evacuated, wasn't actually the one who was ill. So that does narrow it down to the other three, but they're still trying to respect the privacy. But it's important to know that it wasn't actually anything too serious, and NASA has been stressing that everything's going to be okay. But it's 4 astronauts coming home, unfortunately, very abruptly.
Yeah, that's very interesting because you have to think that the ISS is an isolated environment. So that means there's some type of bacteria or virus that's on the ISS that somehow was able to contaminate one of the astronauts. So it's curious of like how they're going about. Oh,
Yeah, no.
Yeah, some of the studies are saying that it could possibly be due to the ISS being too clean. Because there's no good bacteria, so that might be why it's causing
suffering from success.
Yeah, nothing to keep your immune system.
Those hypersterile environments are just so interesting. Like someone getting sick out of nowhere in that is crazy.
It's probably really scary too.
Yeah.
I mean, to think that, you're in a closed space and, one of your partners on board gets sick and you're thinking, what's going to happen to the rest of us? I think that's something that people don't normally think about. It's like if you're an astronaut up on the ISS, like what do you happen? You have to take a sick day.
Yeah, it's like I'm gonna just go sit in the corner and can't really do much.
I'm surprised something like this hasn't happened until now.
Yeah.
That's
With the
true,
ISS
yeah.
has been since well, they crewed it in 2021, but they started building it in 1998. But that thing's been around for decades, and now all of a sudden,
Yeah, that's a
we
good
have
point.
a
Infected now.
pretty crazy.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder if maybe in like future missions they're gonna try to include like medical professionals, like for like specific instances such as this, like
Yeah.
because
They're trained more or less to still do a lot of that, but there's no dedicated actual.
Yeah.
Like
depth.
doctor
Yeah.
on board.
yeah, that's what I mean. I wonder if they're gonna lead into like someone who like is more into like diseases and able to.
I think as the colony stuff, especially with the moon, gets bigger and there's more people there, I think once you're getting on the span of like a dozen or more people, I would be surprised if there wasn't somebody that was like medically licensed and professional there.
That's true. Because even like the Antarctica bases have.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I think with just a few people, it's not a big deal. It's like a minor illness, but I would agree with there being a plethora of people, you're gonna definitely, if you have the range of people, you might as well have someone who's a medical personnel just to be able to take care of any
I agree
illnesses
with
that
that.
might arise.
All right, some of you have touched on it already, but my big loser of 2025, unfortunately, it pains me to say this, it's NASA, the entire organization, for a couple of different reasons. Starting off the year, we had the Trump administration coming to office, and they shook things up by kicking out the current administrator of NASA and installing a new one. And ever since, we've had a revolving door there, and we still don't have a new permanent NASA administrator. So that's drama as it is. And then we had all those scares of the mass layoffs, which most of that has been put to bed, thankfully. But we've also got leaks, lots of leaks that are a PR nightmare for NASA, meaning that they're diverting valuable resources and time from things like Artemis that they should be spending their time on to quelling the public's anger over these leaks. Also, we have the drama with the Sierra Space Dream Chaser. That ship has definitely sailed. It's not working well, and it seems like NASA has completely given up on it, even though they've spent way too much money on it.
Seems more like a nightmare rather than a dream.
Absolutely. And finally, Artemis. Of course, Artemis has more delays. We should have expected this, and most of us did.
But it's flying in 2 weeks.
Supposedly, we'll see if that happens.
Hopefully.
I'm looking forward to it if it does.
Jacob, I'm curious though, the leaks destroying NASA PR, what are some of the leaks that have come out like within 2025 for this?
Well, the most damaging one came out over the summer and trickled out even longer after that the congressional Democrats were investigating NASA for the potential layoffs and 25% budget cuts. But it seems like they've renegotiated all of that with NASA. At least we think so, but the congressional budget still hasn't been fully approved. So what ends up happening in the next couple of weeks in Congress, we'll have to wait and see.
Artemis having been delayed so long is crazy. I made a video of my grandfather who worked in the Apollo program for one of my college finals. And one of the things they even said was, oh, the Artemis program is just around the corner, and that was in 2022.
Yeah, I remember when it first launched, and I was a first-year undergraduate student for the physics program, and I remember watching the first Artemis launch on top of one of the parking garages at University of Central Florida's campus, and to think that now we are, a couple of weeks away from the next launch, but there has definitely been significant delays, and even with Artemis going forward, like Artemis 3, there's already been delays on that as well.
I remember I went to space camp, and the first I heard of the Artemis was there, and like it's launching in 2024, and I was really excited about it. And now it's like we're in 2026, and we're like 2 weeks away. So I'm really excited, especially being so close to Titusville, getting like a prime viewing of it.
That's true, yeah.
2 years of delays. Not too bad on
It's been worse.
space schedules, but
It's enough for people to
Still not
really
great.
notice.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Lisa.
Well, it's all good. So my very bad news, unfortunately, is the orbital debris crisis. So there's launches every day, basically, in Cape Canaveral. We're about 3 to 4 launches every single week. This accumulates to about 342 launches in 2025, as to in comparison to 102 in 2019. So we're just increasing exponentially in the amount of launches. And these launches are very important. They're helping with getting Wi-Fi to everyone around the world and just research amongst all of like astronomy and astrophysics. But at the same notion, we're getting a ton of debris in the atmosphere to the point where it's getting harder and harder to launch through the atmosphere. It's to a point where it's easier to go through the asteroid belt, where there's miles and miles apart from an asteroid, versus in the atmosphere, it's inevitable that you're going to hit some type of space junk. We have over 2,500 objects that are larger than 10 centimeters and 500,000 1 to 10 centimeter particles that we can just hit, which it doesn't sound that big. But when you're thinking of a rocket that's going like thousands of kilometers per second, it hitting one of those debris, it's going to slow it down, it's going to cause issues. And there's just not much that we can do about it because launches are just getting way bigger. There's laws being enforced, but it doesn't stop the balance between science and exploration, and then also just keeping care of our Earth and our atmosphere, because it's only going to get worse and worse as we keep doing launches. I'm sure in 2026 we're going to have way, way more. And once we have more launches with people on them, we're going to have to be a lot more careful about going into the atmosphere and just going to the moon and whatnot, especially if we want to do space exploration all the way to the moon and Mars. That's going to be in about 20, 30 years. So I can't imagine how much space junk is going to be in the atmosphere. There's eventually going to start being casualties because there'll be bigger chunks that we could potentially hit. We're going to have to calculate it. I know the ISS has to calculate and move around some space junk if it's big enough.
Yeah, and to even kind of segue off of that, it's going back to what you mentioned earlier with how, international collaboration on trying to remove the space debris, and why there's such a big emphasis on that right now. And I mean, this is exactly why, it's why that international collaboration is super important, because there was a lot of launches in 2025, and going forward, it's something that definitely the space community needs to be alert about.
Yeah, I want to add that, it's not only an issue for astronomers, but the number of launches seem to kind of indicate diminishing returns with the number of these things going up. Because now all they're doing is they're just launching more to increase the version of the Starlink satellite, because they just have to do a little tiny improvement over them. So my issue with Starlink is I wouldn't really be calling these things missions anymore, because a mission has an end. Starlink doesn't seem to have an end. So where do we draw the line on that? And what do we call this? Do we just call this an indefinite project? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's like at what point does it really become like this is enough and then it's this is too much?
Yeah.
Right.
You know, and I think who draws that line too? You know, who decides when it is enough?
The answer is going to have to be something like the Antarctic Treaty, where we treat space like the common heritage of humanity, where signatories have to abide by certain policies with space. And that's going to have to include private businesses, not just countries like the Antarctic Treaty.
Yep.
Yeah.
And speaking of Starlink, that segues perfectly into my worst news of the year, which was back in July. Let's see if I can word this properly. Back in July, astronomers found that Starlink satellites were interfering with a lot of their research due to leaving them, they have lights on them, massive streaks of light going across their images, where they were they weren't expecting these satellites to be. And this was in July, and I forgot to look this up. There were countless more satellites launched since then that I can only imagine made the problem so much worse. And it just begs to question, when is enough enough, I guess, for lack of a better term? Because these satellites are already linking the entire world. And that is amazing. This worldwide communication is brilliant, and I am so glad that we do have it. But that then leads into the question of why do we keep launching more if we already have the worldwide connection? And part of that is, unfortunately, there are so many of them are not in getting proper orbit, and we're having them fall out of the sky at a rate of 1 to 2 per day.
Oh wow, I did not know that was that frequent.
Per day. And they're planning on going and boosting their the launches and the production and everything. A lot of researchers estimate that it could be as high as 5 by 2030. 5 falling out of the sky per day. And I only just learned recently, because my dad randomly mentioned it, I guess Blue Origin is also trying to launch their own similar network very soon, this year even. And that is scary, because we have all these satellites that they launched so many of, that many are designed to fall from orbit. And let's not even go into the Kessler effect. I don't want to go back into that again. But think about how many materials we're losing. These rare metals, gold, platinum, cobalt. They need this stuff for these satellites to function properly. And by falling out of the sky, we are losing these materials.
A lot of money going into that too, you know, and especially with the astronomy research too that's being impacted. I can only imagine, just based off of the amount of astronomy research that's been impacted by Starlink satellites alone, if you add another company on top of that, you know, you're just doubling the effect that we're already trying to mitigate. You know, it's intense, it's a lot.
And I'd almost be scared of Blue Origin and SpaceX becoming more competitors, because then it's going to push them to pump out more and more satellites just to compete with each other.
All right, Chad, it's time to hear what you got. What is the worst news in your opinion?
It's going to be, well, there's a general honorable mention. We'll keep that to the end, but it was the closure of the NASA Goddard Visitor Center. This was I think it was a congressional move. It just irks me to have something like that closed down. That blocks access to space, and that's not what we're about. We're the opposite of that. We want to present space to new space fans. So closing down a space center is just stupid. So that really got me down for that 2025. I really thought the whole year was going to be trash. But there were some cool things in 2025. So I'd have to say, if I drew 2025 on a graph, it would just go like this.
This is like a sinusoidal graph.
So a couple honorable mentions. They did general launch diversity. We didn't really have a whole lot of other rockets go up besides the Falcon 9. The Falcon Heavy didn't even go off. And we had
true.
one Vulcan launch and I think 2 Atlas V launches. So for on American soil, that's pretty much what all went up was the Falcon 9 and the New Glenn. I can't forget about that. And then last but not least, I call this Moonfest 2025, and that was all the private moon landers that crashed on the moon. So that's my list for the BAD in 2025. We're going to take another break, and when we come back, another topic, and that is what we expect in 2026, and also comments from the last show. Stay tuned. Don't go away.
What to expect for space in 2026? Back to some good news after, the last news unfortunately was not too bright.
I guess I can quickly knock mine out. I think since I already kind of mentioned it, hearing that like China's trying to research how to safely dispose of space junk, and since that was a big thing for a lot of our negative news, I think that's going to be very good because they're already working better with other space programs, and they said they wanted to work on this. So yeah, I expect to hear some good news this year about that.
That's good. I know that next month, for all of you astronomers and observers out there, there's going to be a planetary parade. And so you'll be able to see Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. Although those outer giants, you may need a telescope in order to view them, but they all will be visible in the night sky at the same time. So if you have a telescope, I would definitely get it out and see if you can get a good look.
I think Neptune exclusively you have to have a telescope with,
Yeah.
but all the other ones you should be able to see with the naked eye if you're just like in a good, less light-footed area. It's cool. I remember I woke up early in the morning, the last one, which was I was in high school, and watched it just like at the crack of dawn. I'm not a morning person, so it takes a while for me to get up. And the parade was one of the things that did. On to my better news. I have been excited about the Roman Space Telescope. So that one should be launched in about March. It's going to be in near infrared, which since it's a lower frequency or lower wavelength, it's a higher wavelength. Since it's a higher wavelength, it will be able to penetrate through all of the intergalactic dust and whatnot and be able to shine really on exoplanets, supernova IA, and then also galaxies. So this will really help with our research on dark energy and just the Big Bang and how everything started. So I'm very excited for that.
I'm hoping we're going to get some progress on finding Planet 9. I know
Yeah.
Some people don't think it's real. I happen to be in the camp that I think it's probably there.
We just
And I
got
hope it's there.
One could hope that'd be
Yeah.
really cool information to see come out.
It would be very cool. I think it's pretty far away if it does exist. There was
A
some
bit.
interesting information coming out later in 2025 that pointed to maybe there could be one, but we're going to have to wait and see on that for a couple months.
Well, I'll just follow up here with, I agree with Liza. I'm looking forward to the Nancy Roman Grace Telescope. Hopefully I said the words in the right order.
Sounds right.
Some people actually have the Roman part
Grace
flipped.
Roman,
Yeah, it's a lot of first names.
So the cool thing about this, though, it's going to be launching on a Falcon 9, or not a Falcon Heavy, and also it's going to be placed in the Lagrange 2 area. I'm not sure if that's the one on the other side of the moon.
Yeah, so that's where James Webb is. It's going to be out past the altitude point.
Okay, we do have a space pod that was done by Jacob. He explains more in depth about what a Lagrange point is.
Yes.
So go check it out. You'll learn a lot more about Lagrange points from him. Yeah, that's all I have to say about my outlook
Alexis,
for.
what are you looking forward to for 2026?
I'm looking forward to Japan's next mission, which is the Japan MMX, and it's to go to both of Mars moons to collect surface samples.
Oh,
and
wow.
it's going to be returning this year. They're going to be returning hopefully by 2031 if everything goes okay, and it is to discover where the origins of those moons are from, which I think would be pretty cool to figure out.
That would be very cool.
Interesting.
All right, Chad, bring us up to date. What are the comments from the last show?
Well, this first one comes from Blue Bog on Reddit. Honestly, impossible to tell because they're not open about their mission, architecture, aims, funding, or hardware. Proof will be in the pudding. And this comment is regard to our last episode on is US or China winning the moon race. So, what are your thoughts on that?
It's hard to tell, I feel like, at this point right now, especially too with, coming back from the proposed NASA budget cuts. I think that definitely would have docked our position in any sort of like space race. I think as the year goes on, we'll just have to kind of wait and see.
Part of me is hoping it's stuff, but at the same time, I don't really know if it matters at that point anymore. Most countries are in like more positive relationships with each other than they were during like the original space race to the moon. So
Just like you were mentioning earlier on the show of that partnership about the space debris.
yeah, and now there's a lot more partnerships. So I think the dream would be just everybody works together to the point where it doesn't matter, but that's probably not going to happen. But I mean, who knows? I'm not too worried about who's going to win. I'm just hoping that we do it.
Yeah.
As a historian, I think it does matter
Yeah.
who wins.
Yeah.
And I would say that China is taking a very, let's do things and see what happens. And the US is taking a more slow and steady approach. We've done it before. We're going to make sure that we do it right again.
Which is more important.
I have just remembered a thing I heard years ago where China mentioned that they want to do mining operations on the moon and send those materials to Earth, which I then remember hearing, oh yeah, that's not going to end well. So maybe I do have a winner that I want in mind. Now that I think about it.
I do think that it's good to have some competition, because especially with the space race back in the 60s, it promoted a lot of technology that we invented Velcro and other various things that just helped the expansion of human race in general. So having maybe not as intense of a competition, but just competition nonetheless really just promotes human ingenuity, and it's really good just to have that inspiration to keep forcing yourself and pushing yourself to the bounds of humanity, to just innovate and create new technologies that will push us forward to hopefully, being on the moon and going and having exploration further out.
And our other comment from last show was from Svankinson, I think. Also on Reddit. He or she says, I largely agree with your point, but a couple caveats. There is a race. Don't pretend this one is like the Cold Wars. And the last time those things you mentioned happened was over 50 years ago. There's almost no living know-how remaining of that. So while the US holds a definitive advantage, it could still squander it. The USSR did. What are your thoughts, guys?
Well, the Russia did beat us a lot in a lot of categories in the space race. The first orbit of a human, the first spacewalk. What else did they
And
do?
Laika,
the first animal sent to space. They did all these first, except for
the moon. We landed on the moon first. That's all that matters.
I see it as a relay race. Everybody passing the baton, all their people got it. In the very end, they just tripped up and we were able to get in. And when it comes to a race, that last marker is all that kind of matters. I do kind of agree with the idea, don't pretend that this is kind of like the Cold War's space race, because, again, like I said before, we're not in a current, very toxic position with all these other countries. So I do hope that it is more friendly. But yeah.
I do want to state that statement might not age well.
Yeah.
This could heat up very quickly.
Famous
especially in
last
20
words.
Yes. I guess
As both the Chinese and the United States ramp up the return to the moon and to Mars, it seems like that could be getting a lot hotter of a space race than we currently have right now.
Fair enough.
I'm just gonna hope it's a friendly competition that pushes us just enough, but not too much over the edge. The orbital edge. Sorry.
And Chad, I think you have a special little segment to tack on here at the end.
It is after hearing all of you, I've decided to pick the executive producer's best and worst of space for 2025. And for that best of space, I'm going to have to choose the New Glenn escapade mission because it was not only that exploration mission, our push to Mars, but they went to Mars in such a different way because the Mars window wasn't open until 2026, but they launched in 2025. They were going to do this. It's confusing, but it's tricky orbital mechanics to go around the Earth first and then catapult
Oh yeah.
and do another burn after. I think they've done that burn already to Mars. I think they've done it already, but they were just going to do I think one orbit, a highly elliptical one, and then just fire off to Mars in 2026. So that was pretty clever. And now for the worst thing, it's going to be that launch diversity. That's just to get more people excited about space. We need to show people hardware. We need to show people that payloads are going to be going up. Science is going up. Not just the U.S. doing everything. We want to see other countries getting involved too. There's other, like I think Norway has got their rocket called the ISAR. It's called the Spectrum rocket, and it did blow up on its first try, but they're going to try again, and hopefully it's a success.
Good to learn from your mistakes.
Yeah. Well, we're going to close out this first episode of 2026. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you share this, like, and leave your comments down below. And again, I'm your host, Chad, and this is our co-host, Jacob. And then Liza, our astronomy correspondent, Ava, our astronomy correspondent, Kevin, our spaceflight correspondent, and Alexis, our spaceflight correspondent. And we will see you in 1 month. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.